Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to break down this one single phrase, but it's an explosive one. It's echoed all the way from Washington to New Delhi and Moscow, and it's kicked off this massive global debate.
So this is where it all started. This quote, former U.S. President Donald Trump is talking about trade, and he just drops this line, calling India's economy dead. I mean, wow, that's a really powerful, pretty dismissive thing to say, right? But it makes you wonder, what does that even mean? Like, what does it take for an economy to actually be considered dead? And, the big question is there any truth to it?
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the claim itself. Then we'll figure out what a dead economy is supposed to be. We'll look at some real-world examples of economic collapse, and then check the actual data on India. And finally, we'll try to get to the bottom of why this was said in the first place. Sound good? Let's dive in.
All right, first up, the claim itself. And, context here is absolutely everything. This comment didn't come out of some dry economic report or a summit. Nope, it was said right in the middle of a really tense back and forth about trade tariffs and, big picture geopolitics. Just keep that in the back of your mind because it's going to be super important for understanding what's really going on.
So, what exactly is a dead economy? Before we can even start to check the facts on this, we've got to have a solid definition. What are we even talking about here?
So here's the first thing that jumps out. This phrase, dead economy. It's not a real technical term that economists use. You're not going to find it in any textbook. It's really more of a political jab, right? It's language designed to paint this picture of absolute failure, like zero growth, no jobs, and just no financial stability at all. And look, when an economy is actually collapsing for real, there are very clear signs. We're talking about businesses shutting their doors everywhere, mass unemployment, the money in your pocket suddenly becoming worthless. You go to the store, the shelves are empty. It can even lead to a food crisis. That's what a true, catastrophic economic failure looks like.
Okay, let's talk about the anatomy of a collapse. To really drive home how serious this label is, let's look at a few real-world examples. Countries that have unfortunately experienced this kind of crisis firsthand.
Let's start with the case of Venezuela. Here's a country whose entire economy was pretty much built on oil. But when oil prices tanked and the crisis was badly mismanaged, the whole country just went into this catastrophic downward spiral.
And get this, just try to process this number. According to the IMF, at its peak, hyperinflation hit 10 million%. No, that's not a typo. 10 million%. Imagine everything you've ever saved becoming completely worthless, practically overnight. Your currency is basically just paper. That is what a dead economy looks like.
All right, next up, let's look at Zimbabwe. Back in the 2000s, a series of really controversial land reforms basically dismantled the country's entire agricultural sector, and that was the backbone of their whole economy.
And the fallout from that? It was somehow even more extreme. We're talking hyperinflation hitting 231 million%. It got so bad the government literally just had to give up on its own money. They abandoned their currency entirely in 2009. Can you imagine that? Your country's money just stops existing. Now that is a dead economy.
And for a more recent and really tragic example, we have Afghanistan. When the Taliban returned to power back in 2021, the country's economy was thrown into crisis almost immediately. So what happened? Well, the foreign aid that made up a staggering 40% of the entire economy, it was just cut off. Billions of dollars in central bank assets were frozen. The result was this massive, immediate shockwave. The economy didn't just slow down, it shrank. It contracted by an incredible 27%.
All right, let's do a reality check on India's economy. So now we have our benchmark for what dead really means, right? Hyperinflation in the millions of percent, currencies becoming worthless, massive economic contraction. So now let's take a hard look at India and see if any of the data actually fits that description.
Well, as you can see, the data tells a completely different story. Far from being dead, India's economy is actually growing at a really healthy clip, around 6.5%. I mean, just look at this chart. That's more than double the global average, and it's way faster than the U.S. economy is growing. This looks like dynamism, not stagnation.
And it's not just the growth rate, it's the sheer size we're talking about. This is a nearly $4 trillion economy. That makes it the fourth largest in the entire world, and it's on a path to become the third. This isn't some bit player. This is a major engine for global growth.
And then you've got this number, over $700 billion in foreign exchange reserves. You can think of that like a giant national rainy day fund. It's a huge shield that protects the country from global economic shocks. That's a sign of stability, not weakness.
And honestly, the evidence just keeps piling up. India is one of the USA's top 10 trading partners. We're talking over $131 billion in trade. Inflation, unemployment, they're considered to be under control. The government is spending huge amounts on new infrastructure. And hey, let's not forget that the people running some of the biggest companies on the planet, Google, Microsoft, IBM, that's world-class talent that came out of India. These aren't signs of a dead economy, they're signs of a vibrant, globally connected one.
Which brings us to our final section, data versus diplomacy. I mean, if the data so clearly doesn't fit the dead economy label, then what is this really all about? Yeah, you really have to ask, right? Why would you make a claim that's so easy to disprove with basic facts? What's the end game? What's the point of using that kind of language if it just doesn't line up with reality?
And that's where we find the real story. The source material suggests that this phrase, dead economy, it was never meant as a serious economic analysis. It's a tool. It's a political weapon, a tactic you use in the high-stakes game of international diplomacy and trade negotiations. It's a powerful reminder that on the world stage, words aren't always used to describe reality. Sometimes they're used to shape it. So maybe the next time you hear a powerful statement like this, the first question to ask isn't, is that true? But what is it they're trying to achieve?